welcome. It is time to talk the wilderness. Is it underrated? Let's find out. Well, it's certainly not looking good for the shops, man. You are not picking the wilderness for the shops. You know it, I know it, everybody knows it. You do get the bandit camp duty free if you ever want to sell your alkables, which you are going to be getting a lot of alkables in the wilderness, so you can sell them to that shop, get decent GP for them. And then you also have the ruin shop in the mage arena. That one, it is a good ruin shop, there is that. But let's move on to like where the wilderness has some strengths. All right, I've got the wilderness supplies kind of just up here as a reminder in the corner. Basically, everything that you do in the wilderness generates supplies. This is going to be true for a lot of the skilling activities, true for any of the mobs that you're killing, especially in like the Wilderness Slayer dungeon, Reb Caves, and with the bosses. All of the supplies that you're gonna need in the wilderness are essentially just in the wilderness, which is kind of nice. But in terms of the skilling options, you are gonna be getting access to black chins as well as black salamanders. Black chins are the best hunting XP in the game, and one of the other benefits of being in the wild is you get one additional trap when hunting, so that can help you as you're going through and just kind of like training it up. Plus the fact of having access to black chins, literally the strongest AoE range thing that you can get. So if you want to do something like power train your range once you have the level to wield black chins, then well, you've got them. So you'll be able to use them. You are also going to be getting access to the Abyss, which probably won't be that helpful for you just because in the past we've had the thing called last recall. So you don't have to make trips like back and forth to altars all the time. Most of the time you just have to get there once and then you're able to like teleport to a bank, last recall back to the altar. So I don't think there'll be a lot of use out of going to the Abyss, but it is here in case you need it, in case maybe they don't do last recall this year. And the other benefit being that you can come here to repair your rune pouches. So if you are using those to just get a little bit more pure essence per trip, then that might be helpful. On the fishing and cooking side, you have got dark crabs. These are going to be really AFK. Granted, they are kind of a high level, but this gives you another alternative to things like Karambwans that you have in the starter area. You are also going to be picking up some Runite rocks. There's some near the lava maze. You can also mine the Runite golem in the wilderness resource area. Plus, all of the bosses drop the dragon pickaxe. That is full dragon pickaxe, no like broken or anything funky like that. So if you get it, you're able to use it. You've got the Rogue's Chest, which has been updated since the last league. So that's going to be really good theming XP, pretty decent supplies, loot. So it's just another way to kind of like generate resources. And I think that's what you're going to get a lot of in the wilderness, but we'll talk about it a little bit more. There are yew trees and magic trees up in that resource area. So if you need those, you've got them available to you. The agility course was also updated, and that does mean that it gives pretty good XP, and it will also give you a lot of alkables and supplies as you're running the course. And something that they've been talking about in the league's Discord is potentially removing the lap streak requirement, which if you didn't know, the longer you stay in that wilderness agility course, the better your drops get. So if they remove that, makes it a little bit easier, or if they remove the loss of that streak, it'll make it easier. Plus they've also talked about maybe removing the need to pay in to get the alkables and the supply drops. So we'll have to keep an eye on that, but even if you do have to pay a little bit of GP and just kind of stay out there for a while, it's still going to be a really strong way of getting supplies and having agility experience. It's probably worth noting as well, since everybody is Iron Men, the wilderness isn't quite as dangerous as it would otherwise be. Don't get me wrong, people will still try to kill you. People might try to push you out of certain spots, or, I mean, you get people who just like PKing and they just want to PK, you know? They want to PK with their crazy relics and stuff. So like, you will still have that, but you're not going to lose your stuff to anybody. Granted, it can get a little bit annoying if someone's like amping where you die if you've got your supplies dropped on death, but you can turn that option off in your settings. That way you don't end up having that issue. But enough of that side tangent. Continuing on, you've got the Chaos Altar here for prayer. As I'm sure a lot of you know, not only does this give you a lot of XP per bone, but it also has the chance to save you bones every time you use them on here. So this is going to be, again, a really powerful prayer training method throughout the entire league. The last thing that I wanted to call out here is Crystalia as the Slayer Master. While you technically have her in the starting area, without the Wilderness, you can't do Wilderness Slayer. So now someone was saying that all of the Slayer Masters and the points are treated the same. So you're not getting necessarily like a point boost in doing Wilderness Slayer, but I do think Wilderness Slayer compared to normal Slayer is a little bit more efficient, maybe a little bit quicker, just because everything is in one area. So you may still get a little bit more points out of doing something like this, but the other major benefit with Wilderness Slayer is the fact that you get Laren's keys, and we'll circle back and talk about those in a minute, but just keep that in mind. Like, if you're doing Slayer and just a normal master in the rest of the world, besides the one that's in Zaya, like, you're gonna get an additional benefit by doing Slayer through Crystalia. Moving on to the mobs and activities, we've got you can slay the subscribe buttons here. You can use the subscribe button really well to get a lot of XP. You can always make sure to go and find the subscribe button out there. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The algorithm took over for a second there. Oh man, where are we? Oh. Mobs and activities in the wilderness. Golly. Did you press the subscribe button? Tell me that was worth it. All right. You've got a lot of stuff that you could do in the wilderness. So really the big features of the wilderness is being able to just generate a lot of alchables and a lot of resources. And I do think that this is kind of an underlooked part of the wilderness because yes, while you can go and skill for supplies, and there will probably be tasks associated with getting 99 fishing, 99 woodcutting, and everything like that. It's not always the most fun thing to do. And it also can open you up to just being able to pick better skilling options. Who wants to go and chop magic trees to 99 when you're in leagues? All right, I know there's some of you, but you know what I mean? Not every way of skilling is going to give you good supplies and good XP. So by having a lot of ways to generate supplies for yourself, it can really open up some of your other options when you go to do those types of skills. But to circle back to some of the specifics within the wilderness, you've got zombie pirates, which are new. And while in the main game you do need the wilderness diaries in order to get the full benefit of the zombie pirates, I believe it's up to the medium diary. We may still see that in leagues, we may not. We'll have to see if they end up changing that, since everybody's an Iron Man, don't really have to worry about it. But even if you need the medium diaries, this is still gonna be really, really good cash early game. It's gonna be good cash late game too, but especially early, if you are in desperate need, the amount of alchables and supplies and things that drop from zombie pirates is gonna be really good. You've also got a load of dragons just kind of chilling out there. I put green dragons up here as well as lava dragons. Both of them, I think the focus for the most part is on prayer, but they do also drop things, they'll help with crafting with the dragon D-hide. You'll also get a couple of alchables and things, so it's good for money. It's gonna be true for a lot of stuff in the wilderness. But you've got lava dragons for early prayer XP, just being able to bury the bones straight up in Lava Dragon Isle. You're getting a lot of XP, you don't have to run them anywhere. So this can be a really powerful option, especially for early prayer. And then once you get to the Wilderness Elite Diary, all of the dragon bones will end up being noted, so you can use green dragons to really start to build up a stack of dragon bones quite quickly and just knock prayer out. Coming down here, we have got the Mage Arena. So not only is there the Ruin Shop, but you also can get yourself the God Cape, the Imbued God Cape, and also the God Spells, which they won't necessarily be super useful since there's been the Mage rework and now elemental weaknesses have a much bigger place in the game. But there is probably a little bit of space where you could use these, because with the charge spell, the max hit for all of the God Spells is 30. So there may be a little bit in the mid game if you're a magic build where this does actually have some use for you. Along the lines of Slayer, you are picking up a ton of Slayer creatures. Most of these are condensed into the Slayer Cave, so it's giving you some more options, kind of increasing that Slayer XP, giving you access to superiors for things like the Imbued Heart, as well as some of the other drops that come from some of these Slayer creatures, like Ruined Boots from Necreals, to help kind of fill that mid-game gap. You do also get spiritual mages, rangers, warriors, all of that in the God Wars dungeon that's on the other side of the wilderness, so that'll give you things like dragon boots to really lock in that boot slot for melee, and ecumenical keys, which once you get some of the diaries done, you'll be able to alch for cash, so that also is another way to generate cash. Kind of a theme of the wilderness, isn't it? Now, in terms of some other things going on, we've got the muddy chest here, and if you weren't aware, this was actually updated, so you can get wilderness supplies as well as Laren's keys from this chest, so it's actually worth opening it now. So if you were sleeping on the muddy chest, sleep no more. And with those keys, you can take those keys and you can go to the Laren's chest up in the pirate hideout that has, again, a lot of supplies, a lot of money. I feel like I'm repeating myself. Supplies, money, supplies, money. But you can also get the Dagonai robes out of this chest, which is a pretty good mage set. You do get a little bit of percent bonus from each piece, as well as it has a prayer bonus. So it's actually a little bit better than something like Infinity robes or maybe like Swamp Bark. It's going to be a little bit better than those. Speaking of money and supplies, money and supplies, money and supplies. You've got the Revenant Cave, right? So you've got any of the Revenants in there. They all are going to drop the Revenant weapons as well as the Amulet of Avarice, any of the statuettes, which are just straight cash, stacks of supplies, noted supplies if you've got that Avarice necklace on. So just in general, this is going to be really good. The weapons themselves are also pretty good. They won't necessarily be best in slot anywhere compared to some of the other regions, but within the wilderness, they're probably going to be best in slot, and they're not bad outside of the wilderness either. Granted, they are a little bit rare, even with the increase in drops, so just be ready, you're going to have to kill a lot of revs. Circling back this way, we've got the Fountain of Ruin, which I will say it is actually useful. There's often some tasks for casting certain spells, and one of the benefits of the Fountain of Ruin is when you're next to it, you can just cast anything without the need of having ruins on you. So I know last year one of the things was casting a surge spell, which required Wrath Ruins, but if you didn't have the Fremnik area, you couldn't pick up Wrath Ruins, so you were able to get that task completed just because you had the wilderness, you had that Fountain of Ruin. It's also probably going to be a task related to the Eternal Glory. The item itself probably won't be useful to you, but if there's a task associated to it, there you go, get a couple extra points. And I was saving this one till last because I think this is probably one of the biggest deals, if not the biggest deal as part of the wilderness, and that is the Ferox Enclave pool. As I've mentioned in some of the other areas, it's actually really difficult to get yourself a stat reset, and this is because the player-owned house pool is such a pain in the butt to get up to max level. You can get it to heal prayer, maybe you push to heal hit points, but the problem is you need things like staminas and anti-venoms to get that up to max level, so you almost can't get the max level pool in your player-owned house, which makes things like the Wilderness Ferox Enclave pool really valuable. So this one, both in the early and the late game, is going to be really, really helpful, especially if they do some sort of permanent teleport items. Like one of the relics allowed you an amulet that could take any of the teleports in the game from jewelry and just use it as many times as you wanted to. So you'd be able to come into the Ferox Enclave as often as you want, and that pairs really well with something like Last Recall, assuming that they do that again this year, where you can just go straight back, you pop that thing, you go straight back to where you were. So this can really help, especially early on when you don't have supplies and you need to heal, or later on when you just want to keep your inventory clear for the loot and just kind of go back and forth and be able to get your spec and everything. So really, I know I'm gassing up this pool, but it's good, man. It's a good pickup. Now onto the bosses, and this is a bit of a hot mess because there's a ton of bosses in the wilderness. If you want to experience PVM, you just want to try out all of your gear on stuff, I actually think the wilderness is really good for that, because you've got these sort of groupings of bosses that all kind of build into singular items, but in total, that ends up being just a lot of bosses. What is this? There's 10 bosses, 11 bosses here just in the wilderness. So to talk to each of these a little bit more specifically, you've got the Corporeal Beast, pretty classic boss right here, drops all of the different spirit shields. Those are kind of fun to play around with. You've got some of the more recently redone additions to the wilderness, and Vedion, Calbarion, Benenatus, all of them dropping some sort of ring upgrade as well as a weapon upgrade for the Revenant weapons. Plus, you'll be able to get, I was gonna call it the Chorusai Blade. Man, did I just go RS3 or something? The Void Waker. So each of these drop a component of that Void Waker blade. It's a good weapon. It's a good spec weapon as well. So that's just a nice little pickup that you can get from the wilderness. You've got each of these three as well, the Crazy Archaeologist, Scorpia, as well as this other dude that, God, I swear, I forget his name every time. Chaos Fanatic. Golly, I don't know why that is so hard every time. All I can remember is Crazy Archaeologist, and that just like, well, anyway. They dropped the Odium Ward as well as the Malediction Ward pieces. It's a pretty good shield, especially because while there are kind of a lot of options in terms of shields in other areas, these are like essentially second best in slot for both of their combat styles. So they are going to be really strong shields. And you can also pick up a Rune Crossbow early from the Crazy Archaeologist if that's something that you need. So that can be helpful as well. You've got the Revenant boss. It doesn't really drop anything different per se from just like the normal Revenants, but you know, better chance at like any of the rare drops. You're gonna be guaranteed a statuette, so you'll get a little bit of cash just for killing it. And then you've got kind of like the older, sadder bosses in the wilderness, where you've got like the King Black Dragon. He doesn't really drop anything special. He does have the best chance at getting a Visage, so like maybe you'll come out here and farm him for that, so you can get a Dragon Fire Shield. And then you've got the Chaos Elemental, which it did get a buff, so it drops supplies pretty well, but again, it doesn't have a unique drop of its own. So if I was gonna guess which one of these bosses we're gonna get an echo version of, it's probably gonna be one of these two, just because of the fact that they lack any sort of unique, cool drop. And honestly, with the Chaos Elemental rework, it might be the King Black Dragon, truthfully, but I do want to place my bets on the Chaos Elemental. I think this is a really fun boss. It has a lot of interesting mechanics that could get empowered in some way. So I think this is probably the way that they're going to go. Now, as to what that rare drop will be, still no idea. Pure speculation. I did see someone in the comments mentioning it would be really cool to see like a best in slot spear that could take down the corporeal beast. I agree. I think that'd be really neat. Otherwise, I mean, there's not a lot of like other gear in the wilderness to like have this lean into the strengths or the weaknesses. The wilderness probably sports more in terms of like mage than anything else, so maybe it'd be a mage weapon if they want to really lean towards the wilderness strengths. Or I mean, I think range is probably the most lacking, so if they wanted to kind of balance that out, maybe it'd be a range weapon. So I don't know. I just said it could be any weapon from any of the combat styles. Okay. Can you tell I can see the future? I'm really good at this. Oh boy. All right, well, we'll just see. Speaking of gear, yeah, it's a little sad compared to some of the other regions. I think in terms of the gear, the wilderness really falls into that support role because it doesn't offer much in the way of upgrades for really anything besides maybe mage. Granted, you do get a lot of cool stuff. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it's a good pickup to get some of the rings. All of the shields are going to be really nice. The Revenant weapons are good, especially if they do something like allow that Revenant weapon bonus to go into the entirety of Gielinor. I mean, then that would make the wilderness super, super good. But as it stands, I mean, yeah, you get the mage setup. And the Scepter is a good charge staff. You can use it outside of the wilderness, even though you don't get the damage bonus. I mean, it's still going to be good, and especially if you can't pick up something like a Trident in Kandarin, it'll be a solid mage weapon for you. Of course, you do get the Dagon High robes, you get the cape, you get the shields. So like, mage is eating pretty good. You've got a good chance at the imbued heart since you've got some of those Slayer creatures. If you do want to combine some of this gear, in order to imbue the Ring of the Gods, you need a Holy Wrench, which is going to be in Mauritania. And if you want to upgrade the shield, you're gonna have to pick up the desert to get the Elidinus Ward. So again, I think at least in the gear side of things, the wilderness is very much in that supporting role. Now for the tasks, we've got the breakdown from last year: 11 easy, 25 medium, 26 hard, 28 elite, and 4 master. Now what can we expect? Rare equipment tasks. It's a lot of rare equipment tasks. You got like spirit shields, rev weapons, the eternal glory, the rings, the wards, the revenant weapons, the void waker, like all of these bosses, they drop a buttload of like random assortments of gear. So like all of that are going to be tasks. Probably going to get KC tasks on a lot of these bosses. You'll see numbers like 150 kills, 300 kills. You'll also have like black chins for hunter, 250, 500 black chins, things like that. Plus I'm kind of expecting we'll see something around the agility course just because it was redone. So maybe like a lap streak or turning in a certain number of tickets, as well as the rogue's chest since that was redone. Maybe it'll be pickpocket the rogue chest 100 times or something like that. So to answer the question, is it underrated? Kind of. I think a lot of people get stuck in that idea of like, what gear does an area bring? I'm guilty of this too, because gear is a big part of the game. That is true. So if you're looking for this area to be like the big PVM, you know, filling out all your slots, that's definitely not what the Wilderness is doing. But the part that I think is underrated within the Wilderness is the generation of cash and supplies. Leagues is a limited time game mode, and it can be an absolute pain in the butt to gather up all of the supplies that you need in order to do certain skills. And the Wilderness poops out supplies, and most of the time it poops out noted supplies. So like, it is so easy to just generate stacks upon stacks of stuff if you have the Wilderness. And something that I've got to experience with this last year, I didn't take the Wilderness on my main account, and I didn't max because it was such a pain in the butt. You know, there's a lot of points behind skilling, and it's kind of a fun goal just to try and max quickly in a temporary game mode too, and like, I was missing that. Now, on my second account, I did pick up the Wilderness, so I got to experience firsthand. I'm like, wow, that is a lot of stuff. You never have to worry about cash. You pretty much never have to worry about supplies. I mean, if you want things like logs or whatever, you go sit in the Revenant caves for like 30 minutes and you're done. You're good. So the Wilderness, while maybe not that exciting from a gear perspective, it supports your other choices really, really well. So I think if I was going to kind of broaden people's horizons, that's what I would focus on. I'd say if you're in need of cash and supplies, the Wilderness is the way to go. Not to mention the fact that you get the Ferox Enclave so that you can use the pool to reset your stats and just kind of help ease that PVMing that you're doing elsewhere too. Plus, you keep in mind, everybody in leagues is an Iron Man. Are people going to kill you in the Wilderness? Sure, there's always people that will, but it's not a lot of people. Like, you're going to spend most of your time out there and be totally safe. And even if someone shows up to kill you, you don't lose your stuff. So it's just the inconvenience of having to get back out to wherever you were. But that is all I've got for you today. Make sure to hit that subscribe button if you didn't when the algorithm took over that slide. Goodness, man. I've got a Discord as well if you're looking for something to join. That'll be down in the description. And I am going to be streaming leagues when it launches, as well as my progress a little bit later into the league. So if you want to see that, make sure to stay tuned. With that, thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.